So what we're hoping to cover, we're going to cover 4 general topics and definitely want to leave about 10 minutes to the broader audience to feel free to ask us any questions. We certainly want to help you uncover everything you're looking to get out of today's presentation. So what we're going to do first, we're going to start with just a quick round of intros. We're going to start with Renee, and then Paris will introduce himself, and then we're going to cover 4 topics along the customer journey, omnichannel experience, how that has changed, how folks should measure success today, what success should look like moving forward, and just a few general ideas moving ahead. So on that note, Renee, we'll open up to you.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Fuller. I am currently the Vice President of Marketing for Milk Bar's grocery channel. Milk Bar is a dessert brand that was founded in 2008, and we have bakery locations across the world, as well as a direct-to-consumer business where we send care packages of delicious treats. At Milk Bar, I'm actually responsible for building and driving the marketing roadmap, launching go-to-market plans for innovation, and developing Milk Bar CPG business strategy and consumer marketplace insights. Prior to Milk Bar, I was actually the director of shopper marketing for S.E. Johnson's lifestyle business unit. And I started my career in sales and account management with the Kellogg Company. And after Kellogg, I held roles in trade, brand management, and customer marketing for CPG firms such as the Kashi Company, which is a subsidiary of Kellogg. I worked for the Hershey Company, where I had the opportunity to work on brands such as Crave, Sharpenberger, and Dagoba. And I worked at a startup brand called Rebel, which is an adaptogen beverage brand. I am the proud graduate of Ohio University, where I received my MBA in executive management. And I'm also a proud alum of the University of Georgia, where I received my undergraduate degree in broadcast journalism. Go Dogs. Thanks, Ben.
Hey, everyone. My name is Shah, and I work at Georgia Pacific on the consumer business. So you know us better for our consumer brands, such as Colton Northern toilet paper, Angel Soft toilet paper, Ronnie paper towels, Spark paper towels, and Dixie paper plates, and Van Naver napkins. At Georgia Pacific, I lead the shopper marketing, retail media, and promotions organizations for our consumer business.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's going to be a really fun conversation here today. So Paras, we're going to start with you. And so we'd love to learn a little bit more about how has the customer journey evolved over the last few years? And also, how has that impacted the way that you look in terms of how you're delivering your digital marketing campaigns at Georgia Pacific?
Definitely, Ben. That's a really good question. I mean, if you think about our business, 2020 was clearly a great year of disruption and challenge. Especially for brands in household care categories. It provided a huge opportunity. Think about our paper business. There was unprecedented demand for paper products, and our brands actually attracted many new users during this time frame as well. And because of unprecedented demand in 2020, focus of ours, from 21 and now to 22, our strategies are focused more on how to find and build relationships with our new users so that they continue to choose us, even as we move into a more stable environment as COVID starts to eventually calm down. And to do this, we also had to recognize just the accelerated media fragmentation, the shift to digital that took place during this time as well. The places where consumers engage with content had significantly shifted away from the traditional channels. People were, using multiple touch points at the same time as they were, more at home. They were changing what they were watching, how they were watching it. And so, we really had to incorporate a lot of that shifting media consumption into our strategies. And so for us, the past few years have really been for learning, better understanding who are these new consumers, what trends and impacts are here to stay post-COVID, and how to reach these current consumers and how to reach new consumers as people, have different purchasing habits, in the future state as well. So I'd say 2021, 2022, not normal years for us, but we do have a better understanding of just what trends are here to stay, whether it's omnichannel retail, media fragmentation, consumer health and wellness, and the importance of that, data dichotomy, and even brand purpose. And so, as I think about just what we did from a digital marketing standpoint, during this time frame, as more retailers collected their first-party data, what we started to do was better understand how can we use a lot of this first-party data through retail media networks to better target, the consumers and to retain them within our portfolio.
Wonderful. That's a perfect segue to the next question to Renee. So Renee, I'd love to learn more about how have some of the changes really impacted your relationship with retailers? There are new opportunities to really connect with today's consumer. There's a lot more data available on the individual consumer. I'm just kind of curious, how has your team navigated a lot of these challenges to reach consumers across a wide variety of different platforms and channels?
That's a great question. So, given that Milk Bar is an emerging brand, our channel is only 2 years old. We launched during COVID with with the national footprint. I realized that I had to fully lean into what the new normal is and partnering with retailers closely through a compelling omni-channel experience. So, when you think about it, it's no longer the days of consumers are either shopping online or they're shopping brick and mortar. It's relevant in both spaces. So it's how do you create this seamless journey for the consumer journey to ensure that you're not only getting on the list, getting in the cart and getting in the heart. And through this new normal, we've ensured through various facets, whether it's top of funnel and partnering with retailers in various forms through social media campaigns or email blast to kind of drive that consistent messaging, moving into mid funnel through engagement, and then further deepening our dive with our conversion metrics and leaning in through like retail paid media, search, sponsored search, just trying to make sure that you're truly disrupting this omni-channel phase.
Wonderful. Yeah, that quote really stood out when we were speaking yesterday, get in the cart, get in the heart as well. So as a brand, how do you build authenticity with today's consumer? Their expectations are very different versus several years ago. Everyone's very focused on corporate social responsibility and really doing good for the world. And I was kind of curious, how do you really build that connection with the consumer?
I look at it in a couple of different facets. I think first, consistency is key. If your brand seems different every single time a person encounters it, you're unlikely to be remembered. You're also likely to have that trust. So inconsistency is how a brand presents itself can cast that doubt. So I think you always have to be consistent in your messaging, your tone, your visual identity standard, values, and so on. I also think that actions speak louder than words. One thing that stands out to me is like when you're cultivating a brand, you just can't say what you stand for, you have to show it. And for example, at Milk Bar, we've leaned into making sure that we actually put our money, I always say this literally where our mouth is, and standing on our values. We strive to be a part of the cultural conversation so consumers can expect that just as much. Lastly, I think that being a part of a brand is engaging in two-way conversations rather than just sending your brand's message into the world and then sitting back and going, oh, they'll respond when they respond. It can be as little as looking into your social media comments and drawing that conversation. It can be as big as reporting back to when your brand is in the news, responding to reviews. Like we actually have a personalization standard where we have a team that responds to reviews on target.com. We send out personalized emails through Amazon just to make sure that we're fostering that dialogue and it's authentic.
Wonderful. Great answer. And Paras, I'd love to open this to you. So with all of the new changes that have been taking place, there have been so many exciting new ways to connect with the consumer. What have been some of the most exciting developments that you've seen in the industry over the past few years? And what would be some desired changes you'd like to see moving forward?
Yeah. So, so Ben, I'll start with like how our business changed over the last few years, right? So, in 2020, kind of bring back to 2020, because that was a pivotal year for business, right? Like, we started to develop strategies to win in curbside pickup and delivery prior to the pandemic, but then COVID accelerated just e-commerce adoption in the paper category by 3 to 4 years. There was a sizable infrastructure expansion during 2020 to accommodate for curbside pickup availability and home delivery. And the paper category was a big beneficiary of that as our product surged. And they continued to surge on ebbs and flows throughout the pandemic. We had actually accelerated our marketing efforts to win in the online grocery fulfillment options by ensuring that we have product on shelf, the right content, to communicate our assortment, retail media support to keep our brands in front of the shoppers. They choose what to buy to help get on the list, and just have a stickiness. It's kind of what Renee was talking about. Making sure as you think about the full funnel approach from awareness down to conversion. Do you have the right social media out there? Do you have the right search set up based on the right keywords and based on the right commodities and sub-commodities. So as we think about the new normal, like there's going to be more of a focus on investing in retail media as consumers increasingly shop via pickup and delivery. And so how do we think about sort of that full funnel approach to reach consumers across pickup and delivery? Because what's happening now is that we're seeing a lot of consumers engage with various retailers across fulfillment options. So they're going in store to potentially do a fill-in trip while they do their large order through pickup, but then they might also get a delivery in between. So as we think about how consumers are changing how they shop, that's also driving a new engagement model with retailers and brands, and I think that's really starting to evolve how we have to speak to consumers and engage with those consumers and shoppers as well.
Wonderful. I'd love to learn more about how do you stay relevant with today's consumer with all their changing expectations and their new ways of shopping. That was a really great story. I'm just kind of curious, what information does your team use to really help plan for today as well as the next 2 years moving forward? I'd love to learn more about the role data plays for you, Paris, and then Renee, I'd open that up to you as well.
Yeah, I think it starts with having the right. I think it starts with having the right data, right? Like data, it's at the start and heart of it, just decision making within Georgia Pacific, and it really underpins what, where, and how we reach consumers across channels that influence their decision making. Making sure we have the right data, it's accessible and easy to use across all the key constituents and decision makers within the organization, and our MarTech stacks, can enable that decision making to happen because of accessibility and ease of use of the data. We also try to focus to have in place just increase I think there's gonna be a bigger focus on how do we try to get the data more accessible and more easy to use over the next few years, because as so many different data sets become available across retailers, across national media, and it all feeds into these sort of these MarTech stacks, it's going to allow you to really take a lot of unstructured data, and then the only way you can use it is if it becomes structured. So I think the biggest thing is knowing the data is sort of at the start and heart of our decision making. How do we take this unstructured data and make it more structured so that we can make it more actionable and change the way that we engage with the consumers as a result?
Wonderful. And Renee, I'd love to open up that same question to you as well.
Yes, I would say that data is pivotal for our brand. Again, given the fact that we're an emerging brand, we don't have an extensive amount of dollars to kind of lean into various platforms and technology that exists today. So how I kind of look at it is, how can I foster a relationship with the retailer to lean more into their first party audience data, whether that is working back with the retailer on like sponsored product search, or for example, like an Ibotta campaign, where you can truly tap into this consumer journey to understand the key demographic, their purchase behavior over a 30-day look back window. All of those things kind of help to craft the journey and give you better insight into how to meet the consumer. So we've been trying to lean in. We're very scrappy here at Milk Bar, and just trying to leverage our retailer relationships as much as possible, just to kind of say exactly like, we don't know what we don't know. How can we foster this relationship with you to ensure that we're reaching the right audience and our dollars are working hard for us and for you as much as possible?
Wonderful. I'm just very curious, how do you measure success today? I know you're now getting some closed loop information, you're able to better target. So internally, how do you measure success? And when you're trying to get some incremental funding to continue to invest in the channels that are really helping to drive the business in the way that you're looking for, how do you tell that story with the information that's available to you today?
Yes, I would definitely say that our team is focused on awareness currently. So from a KPI perspective and metrics perspective, it's been easier to kind of lean into those KPIs and understand and set targets and benchmarks, just given the fact that we're growing substantially. We've only been in CPG for almost about 2 years now. So as we're growing household penetration and share, I'm constantly looking and reviewing velocity performance, trying to gain insights in new to brand consumers, frequency, and repeat data. So for me, those targets are critical at this point in time. as we continue to foster relationships with retailers, my hope is that I can continue to lean in a little bit more into bottom funnel conversion data, just given the fact that, like, when we launch shopper marketing programs, that's been a big challenge this year, I would say. Shopper marketing is still a ch- I would say a channel within itself that people are still trying to identify what it means. And given the fact that there are so many different marketing mediums and tactics that you can lever with shopper marketing, I've been unable to really identify a lot of partnerships platforms that allow us to have closed sales loop or attribution data, which makes it a challenge to then go back and ask for those dollars internally, because I can't say that I drove X return from this marketing program. So what I'm getting better at is trying to identify partners that are willing to do test and learn programs, or lean in and say, hey, I may not have $25,000 for this big study, but can I lean in for a $10,000 study for a small IRI production? And then from there, if I can prove that this test and learn program is working, then I can go back and foster to ask for more of those dollars appropriately. So to close that out, I would say today, right now, I'm focusing on awareness, all like awareness and engagement. And then as I'm moving into shopper marketing, trying to find ways to truly track conversion at that lower funnel.
Love it. Paris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that topic as well.
Definitely. So Renee, I agree with everything you said, but we're also taking a bit of a different approach, given so with my role being in omnichannel shopper marketing, I've kind of focused on flipping the funnel and focus on more, bottom level conversion, really trying to create more of a performance marketing, channel out of my responsibilities, and focus on how do we, maximize the amount of conversion we drive through just driving ROI and incrementality. So I think what we constantly focus on is how do we get the right ROIs and how do we drive incrementality? To your point, Renee, it's tough, getting some of this data. And so what we've done is, we've tried to set up our own just financial models to look at how, look at just critical inputs into our business, understand how do you take a return on ad spend, which is a very loaded transactional metric that really means nothing, and then convert it into an ROI and also measure incrementality along the way, so that we're able to determine what's working, what's effective, and based on what's not effective, how do we kind of walk away from that and reallocate to something else. And so once we kind of achieved the bottom of the funnel performance, we're trying to work our way up into more mid-level and upper funnel as well. And Renee, just to capitalize on what you said, what we're trying to also figure out is, with all the awareness we're driving more people in the funnel, how we kind of guide them through the funnel, kind of drive awareness, engagement, nurture those consumers, and get them to convert when they're closer to the point of purchase, whether it's the physical shelf or the digital shelf.
Wonderful. That's great answer. And I really appreciate you sharing that perspective there, Paris. I'm just kind of curious. So based on how success metrics have changed over the recent years, how do you think that's going to continue to evolve in, let's say, the next 2, 3, 4 years? How has your strategy changed from 2021 to 2022? And how do you think you're going to measure success in 2023? And how might that look potentially different than what you've been doing historically?
Yeah. So, I can go first, and Renee, if you want to take it from there. But, like I said, historically, we looked at return on ad spend, or ROAS, as a key metric in marketing. But I think what we found out is, we came to realize, like, such a transactional metric, it's literally your POS sales divided by how much you spend, right? That says nothing to, the actual shopper behind it or the consumer behind it. Are they new to your business? Is incremental? For all you may have the greatest ROAS, but you're just subsidizing your base business, right? And so knowing that this is the case, what we have focused on more and more is, again, measuring success to focus on the ROI, the true incrementality of this. And then as we think about like the future, I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be more focus amongst retailers to monetize the data that they're getting. With a lot of our brands, we work with just publishers. Publishers are going to also try to share more data too. So you're effectively going to have a lot of unstructured data that exists out there. And so I think the big focus is going to be how you take the unstructured data and structure it, and then use those structured data inputs to create ways to identify and analyze where is incrementality, and then try to optimize your investments to go after the incrementality over the future.
Wonderful.
I would completely agree. For us, we're in the same boat when it comes to measuring a success from a conversion bottom funnel platform. So we lean heavily into ROAS. Pretty much that's the only data that I could see a lot of times when working back with retailers, just do like sponsored product search. So I try to set a baseline to kind of say that ROAS isn't everything, because you can also inflate ROAS. You can put a ton of dollars in, but to Paraz's point, you may not be bringing in new to brand. You may not be driving true incrementality. You could be just driving frequency, which for some brands, that's also key. So I think you have to look at your key objectives to understand exactly how is this data point truly benefiting you in the long run. As I look at data in the future, there are a ton of innovative and disruptive platforms that are launching, but how do you kind of lean in and understand what is going to be best to help you track and measure success? So for example, on our end, because awareness is top of mind, we've kind of leaned more into tactics around surprise and delight sampling, building field marketing and experiential footprints. In 2021, unfortunately, due to COVID, we weren't able to truly lean into engagement and awareness sampling programs, just given the fact that those programs were not available. So we had to kind of lean in with the retailer to say, okay, how can we maximize our reach by distributing samples through online pickup programs or surprise and delight curated boxes? But then the question becomes, what is your ROI on that? So how I've kind of fostered that dialogue internally is to say, our return from a treat to tongue perspective is that for the amount of samples that we're distributing, this reach, if we are able to bring in X amount of consumers to the brand over a period of time, this is what their actual basket size will result to in a 1 year to 2 year radius. On top of that, we always call it back of house math to kind of say, if one person tastes of the product and they go and tell 3 others, what does that look like in relation to driving household penetration and expansion? So I think for me, how I've kind of looked at it today is that we have a ton of data at our fingertips. Unfortunately, a lot of times, because of the data points that we're trying to lean into from awareness driving and funnel tactics, it's been difficult to try to track success. So I've just been trying to kind of nurture and leverage that relationship to kind of say the ROI is justified in a specific form.
Wonderful. And I'm going to open this question up again to both of you, starting with you, Paras, and then Renee. If you could wave a magic wand and you could address one core challenge that you're facing this year, what would that be and why? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
That's a good question, Ben. I would say that I think as we think about consumer engagement, the topic obviously today, I think between inflationary, pressures we're seeing and just labor shortages, getting a product onto shelf. One thing I'd love to, if I can have a magic wand, I'd love to just solve both issues, because I think what's happening is it's impacting the amount of product that can get on shelf and when it's put on shelf. And if there's high rates of out of stock, that can also impact the, what the consumer chooses to purchase at the shelf. And so I think between labor shortages and inflationary pressures, it's making it harder for consumers to engage with brands, because either products are getting too costly for them from a branded standpoint, therefore they're trading a private label, or at the same time they may not find your product on the shelf, and therefore it affects the shopper's ability to really engage with the brands further, to try it. Renee, I think as you said, it's getting in the cart and getting in the heart. It really impacts the consumer's ability to get in the cart, and as a result get in the heart as well. So.
And I would agree, inflation and out of stocks, supply and demand with shortages has been a significant challenge. And it's actually disrupting the way we think about customer loyalty, just given the fact that consumers are not loyal to brands right now, because you can come into a grocery store one day and that product might be on the shelf, and the next day it's not available. You can go online and the product might be there, and the next day it's not. So it makes it hard from a marketing perspective to build this omni-channel seamless experience for the consumer and take them through the journey, because once they get to shelf, your product may not even be there. So it's kind of like, how do you close the loop to ensure that you're creating this seamless experience? And that has been a challenge. I've launched several different marketing programs this year alone where just due to shortages from a labor perspective, we've been behind in resets. So I would drive email blasts, social launches. We would put heavy dollars into programmatic display. We did out of home builds to support retailers. And we were actually getting comments back from the consumers that they couldn't even find the product in the set. And I actually, I always delay my launch support by like 3 to 4 weeks to ensure that the product is actually hitting the shelf, and it still hadn't hit the shelf yet. So you think about all of that time and energy that was spent trying to create this seamless consumer journey. It almost was for naught because the consumer couldn't find the product. We created FOMO, which was great, but at the same time, it was kind of like that letdown at the end of it's just like this beautiful experience that you wanted to present to the consumer.
Wonderful. And we hear that all the time. And Renee, I appreciate the Ibotta shout out. So prior to Crisp, I worked at Ibotta and helped to launch hundreds of innovation products. And they face the exact same challenge that you were referencing, which is I know when my product is shipped to the store, but I don't know when my new product actually makes its way onto the shelf, because typically the old products need to sell before the new one's on there. And so we'd run a campaign and we're projecting to deliver sales in 2,000 stores. We're only seeing sales in 1,000. What's going on here? The old products haven't sold yet. So I'm just very curious on that topic. If you and the team had better visibility into when the product is on the shelf and knowing exactly where it is, how would that help you to elevate your ability to deliver a desirable consumer experience?
I think for us, if we were able to understand when the product was directly hitting the shelf, it allows us to kind of drive better communication with the consumer, understanding exactly from a launch perspective, what is the messaging that we should be kind of stating to the consumer, whether available now, for example, in your CTA versus coming to a retailer near you. These are just different things we have to keep in mind now when we're developing these launches, because we don't want to set up an expectation and not deliver on that seamless experience for the consumer. So I've gotten very tight with my team to ensure that, okay, if we are launching a new innovation in the summertime, let's kind of stagger our launch support with teasers, for example, with saying like coming soon, kind of delivering again on that FOMO experience of the unexpected, which relates back to the brand in the best manner. And then from there, then when we really, really know, and this is working back and partnering with sales, whether it's through merchandising support, so actually going in and surveying the stores. We've even gotten as scrappy as calling stores to see, do you have product in the back room? Can you get it out? Once we feel very, very comfortable that we've hit a specific scanned POS data measure, from there, that's when we really amplify marketing support. But we have to just be conscious with these launches of how we're approaching them to ensure that we're not, again, setting this consumer up for failure at the end, because at the end, when they get to the store and it's not there, we've lost them potentially. And now we have to go back and pay to acquire them again.
That's great. And Paras, I know you referenced that on-shelf availability and kind of supply chain was one area that you would love to help address. I'm just kind of curious, if you were able to address that today, how would you navigate things a little bit differently?
Yeah, no, Ben, I think that the on-shelf availability is key for us. Just to reiterate what Renee said, like to create truly omnichannel holistic campaigns, it gets tough when you cannot guarantee on-shelf availability, or there's delays in stocking shelves, impacts your display compliance, impacts the effectiveness of your features, all of your merch, as well as your marketing as well, right? And so I think that being able to insight into on-shelf availability is critical. Part of what we try to do is focus on launching more of the digital tactics that are more in touch, with inventory availability. So let's take, for example, sponsored search. Renee and I've talked about sponsored search, at the retailers quite a bit so far. Sponsored search will not show up unless the product is in stock, right? So starting with that and trying to win there first, and then once we actually start seeing product scanning and IRI and things like that, we may start to launch broader campaigns at that point, but holding off and trying to be more nimble, more flexible, more agile in the way that we kind of go to market based on availability. So I think that, having limited visibility into on-shelf availability, I think, is a barrier to success in a lot of cases. And so, anything that can help us overcome some of those challenges is something, we're always open and, looking forward to learning more about.
Wonderful. What consumer trends are you focusing on most today? And what do you think are going to be some of the biggest changes in shopping behavior in 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025, if any come to mind?
I'll let Renee go with this one first.
I would say for us, a trend that we're leaning into is more with this digital personalization and making sure that we're kind of building the seamless experience for the consumer. The consumer is constantly leveraging mobile in every form. Like they are like our target demographic. We just did a study where I think like one of our personas that we had identified goes on Instagram and Facebook like 30 to 40 times just within a 2-week basis. So they're constantly sitting on their phones. So what we're trying to leverage is in the form of shoppable content, whether through influencers, whether through programmatic display, kind of leaning in that form to say, okay, we know that you're on your mobile form. How do we meet you in that manner and create, again, this personalized experience that is relevant to you? And that also has helped us in partnering with influencers because we're doing it in an authentic and genuine manner to ensure that we're meeting that target demographic.
Yeah, for Georgia Pacific, I think, where our focus right now is in the retail media space. My belief is that retail media is one of the most disruptive, I'd say, areas over the next few years, especially as the data starts to improve, the data quality starts to improve that retailers have. I think that they're building their capabilities quite a bit over the next couple of years as well, as we see more retailers deploying more dollars behind retail media networks. So I think that over the next couple of years, you're going to start to see a lot more focus on better understanding which retail media networks can help you move, the dial on the business, and which ones are not as effective in helping you, move the dial on that business, and then trying to understand how do we invest, where do we invest, and what's the most effective way to go to market based on the first party data that's available from the retailers, and what can enable someone to effectively reach that shopper near the point of purchase and get them to purchase, whether it's in store or through the digital shelf.
Wonderful. Renee, I'm going to open this question up to you first. Beyond anything that we've discussed here today, what do you think the broader audience would love to learn about you and your experience and some successes that your team has had that we haven't had a chance to share with them thus far today?
I would definitely say that our team is leaning into leveraging social proofing in a deeper manner. We're constantly looking for ways to ensure that we're building the customer's trust and building our brand in their mind so that we're truly driving this emotional benefit through personalization and conveying our values in an authentic manner. But I think that's critical because when you understand what the consumer is saying about you and you open it up again about like this two-way dialogue, whether it's positive or negative, and you allow yourself to be open to the conversation, it builds that customer trust. So I am internally and kind of work back from an engagement perspective to ensure that we're really leaning in on social proofing.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and for me, I'd say that omnichannel shopping habits were boosted by the pandemic. And I kind of mentioned just omnichannel shopping a few times. It's actually in my title too. But as we think about just omnichannel shopping, those habits that were boosted by the pandemic, they're here to stay as consumers continue to shop across multiple fulfillment options. And quite frankly, I think we're going to see more of a blended shopping approach moving forward. As I kind of alluded to earlier on, you're going to have people who are going in store, but then they're also shopping online. What we've actually found is that the retailer who shops across multiple fulfillment options is more valuable to a retailer than the one who only shops in store or online only. And so as this blended shopping approach is going to be, just a more valuable shopper or consumer to the retailer, I think that figuring out how to reach these consumers in the blended shopping approach will be very critical. And so I think there's going to be a bigger focus on delivering the right message and incentives across touch points, whether it's through pre-shop, at shop, or any other, part of just the consumer experience journey, and capturing, the consumer with the right assortment, reaching them with the right content and the support to get them to convert at that shelf.
That's fascinating. So the in-store and online shopper together is driving more for the retailer's business than just the exclusive brick and mortar and
Exactly.
online shopper. So I'd love to learn more about kind of the way that you've collaborated with retailers on helping to drive that really desirable omni-channel shopper to them.
Yeah. So, Ben, I'd say that's something we're trying to work with, multiple retailers to try to figure out, like, what is that value, of the shopper to them, and then, basically develop those joint, partnerships with them to essentially, in the JBP, like, better understand how can we reach, those consumers across multiple fulfillment options? What's the best way to reach in-store versus online? I think what ends up happening is typically you find people focusing on, the in-store piece, because that's, anywhere from 90 to 99% of your business. But then you also look at the other 1 to 10% plus, that's e-commerce. That's actually your fastest growing channel. So trying to understand, really understanding the actual, and Renee, you were talking about persona a little earlier, understanding the persona, of that shopper, what they're shopping, how they're shopping, what are, key trigger points and barriers to get them to purchase, and then using all those as inputs to better understand how can you reach that shopper more effectively. So part of what we're doing is working with retailers to better understand their data, what data can they bring to the table, and then using that data to activate on accordingly.
Wonderful. Renee, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one too.
No, I was going to say we're literally doing the same thing. Again, I lean so heavily on the retailer just because, unfortunately, I don't have extensive dollars to go perform for like outside data sources. So if I can get first party audience data through the specific retailer and kind of craft what that curated experience should be for the consumer, it's going to be rewarding in the end. I think the piece of the puzzle, which has been a challenge for me, is when working back with the retailer, there are so many different marketing mediums that you can leverage. Like, the shopper playbooks are not like what they used to be. I would think when I first started in the field, you would just have point of sale in the store. Now you have everything from retail media networks to social media platforms, programmatic display on-site and off-site, all of these different measures and tactics that you can leverage to reach the consumer. I constantly ask the retailer, forget dollars, forget all of those different things. What do you think is going to be the best way for me to reach that ice cream buyer? What do you think is going to be the best way for me to reach the cookie buyer? How do we start again at the beginning of the funnel, from maximizing awareness to then fully meeting them from an engagement middle funnel and driving them all the way down to point of purchase? If that takes 3 programs, let's lean in and do it and test and learn and understand. But it's truly making sure that you have this omni-channel success, and retailers are able to provide that to you because they have the first party audience data to ensure that you are meeting the consumer where they need to be in their journey.
Wonderful. So I know in probably the next minute and a half that we have left, what is one really big success story that we haven't had a chance to discuss so far that you would like to share with the broader audience that they can take with them for their day today? Start with you, Renee, and then we'll go to you, Paras.
A success story. I would probably say for me, being at Milk Bar over 2 years and seeing the massive amount of expansion that we've had, the distribution growth that we've had, has been phenomenal. But being able to partner with retailers to truly lean in for test and learn campaigns and maximizing that journey has been a success, just because, again, we're small, we're scrappy. But what I would say is that by leaning in and partnering with the retailer just to say what works, what doesn't work, is helping me to craft this narrative moving forward in 2023 and beyond, to say, okay, this is exactly how I should be meeting the consumer to create a personalized, convenient experience that's seamless with consistent messaging. And I'm very excited about a lot of the programs that we've been able to launch over the past year, and taking those learnings and moving forward in 2023 to make sure that we continue to stay a part of the cultural conversation, curate a seamless experience for the consumer, and create and foster an omni-channel wheel that is surround sounding them in every facet.
Yeah, Ben, mine is kind of consistent with Renee. You know, I'd say overall theme wise, like dollars are finite, right? And with finite dollars, I think what we do is pick and choose, you know, what we can do. And so a lot of what we focus our efforts on is really around testing, learning, what we call experimental discovery, and you know, trying to choose, you know, I'd say make 100 different bets and then try to figure out which one is the needle in the haystack that will pay out and try to scale that, right? And so I think, you know, what we were able to do is, as we went down that journey, we were able to really focus on on trying to figure out what I would say it's like using better economic thinking, trying to understand all the different, you know, data inputs available, and then, you know, creating those into financial models and using the financial models to help drive our marketing efforts moving forward. And then, you know, figure out what was more profitable, and then doubling down on what was more profitable tactically. You know, it spanned a few different things, right, which we didn't know before. So I'd say, you know, while it's a very big success story, it's really around trying to hone in on what are the couple successful tactics that was able to help us move our pickup and delivery shares, and you know, really win in this new normal where you're shopping more online versus just in-store only. Given exactly what Renee said before, shopper marketing today is very different from it was, you know, even like 3 years ago. So how do we win in this new normal? It's really driving the focus and trying to do something, you know, bigger and better and more effectively than we did before, based on like the financials and the dollars.
That's wonderful.
Wow.